short, Tadeusz Prochwitz in short, and I'm the head of technical excellence at UNIQA International. And this role is all about technical profitability in our international markets. So performance monitoring, steering, but also, of course, group initiatives to improve pricing sophistication. And today I would like to tell you a bit about UNIQA's ambition, how we arrived at this conclusion that we need to have this ambition, how we are approaching this. We're, I would say, 1/3 on in the journey, and share with you some insights, which I hope you'll find interesting, about what we found in implementation of this ambition. So UNIQA's ambition is to be a regional benchmark in the Central Eastern European or Central Eastern Europe. By that we mean, of course, among others, to be also the regional benchmark in pricing, which means to have best-in-class pricing on all our markets. I would say now that already, as you probably see in the afternoon in the earnings competition results and also in a presentation by Witold, my colleague from Poland. In Poland, we already have very advanced pricing, very sophisticated pricing, great team, top of the market, among the leaders, definitely. And we would like to have the same in all the regions. And let me share with you my experience, because of course, when we talk about this, this improvement, it is about investment. It is about investing in pricing. And let me share my experience, what I've seen has been working and how investments in the insurance industry have been working. And my thought is that there are like two versions of how it's playing out. And one is whenever sales comes to shareholders and says, we really need to have this I don't know, software for agents to boost their productivity, or we need to acquire this insurtech to enter a attractive niche market, or maybe buy a distribution partner. The shareholders are like, whoa, where's my wallet? Immediately, how much do you need? 5 million, 10 million? And this keeps happening over and over again, even though sometimes you find out that the ambitions of GWP were not delivered, and maybe only half of it was delivered, but double the loss ratio. But still, companies keep to invest. And of course, that's good because not all investment have to play out, but you have to try. However, I feel that when the head of pricing comes to the board and says, dear colleagues, I would like to request additional 2 FTEs for pricing. It's very critical for our business. Then usually the board members are like, well, two at once, why not one? Maybe, do you know, we report our headcount in annual reports. It's not easy. And probably nowadays, how about ChatGPT? I've heard that it can replace data scientists. I read about it in Financial Times just yesterday. So it is, I think, a bit more of a challenge. I'm lucky enough that in my job, I don't really face this challenge anymore, because at UNIQA, there is an agreement among key stakeholders that pricing is one of the key advantages, competitive advantages, one of the few left, I would say, for insurers, where we need to invest. And let me start with a short case study of Poland, because I think this is what really drove the thinking at UNIQA about pricing. And to show you this case study, I would like to go back 10 years to 2014. This was actually, I moved back to Poland from London in 2013, joined BCG and started doing projects in insurance, also some benchmarkings. And at that time, I wouldn't say that Poland was extremely advanced in pricing. So almost none of the big players had demand optimization, demand-based pricing optimization. A lot of the companies didn't really have what I would call a dedicated pricing team. Of course, there were actuaries in reserving functions, sometimes in finance, that would calculate the burning cost or risk price, which was used for the tariffs. But sometimes they didn't even have KPIs on profitability. So this was 2014. UNIQA has been in the Polish market for over 30 years, but it decided to expand significantly its footprint by acquiring AXA in around 2020. And so in 2014, it looked like this. But then if you fast forward only 5 years, suddenly the story was completely different. If you would read annual reports by CEOs, most of them would mention that they are investing in pricing, they're expanding data scientist teams. Most of the top 10 players had already advanced capabilities, rating engines, optimization engines, and everyone was hiring like crazy, trying to build big pricing operations. And so the first story that we took out from that is that even in insurance, which is a relatively stable, I would say, industry, change can happen relatively fast. 5 years, I guess by most standards, 5 years is not that fast, but I would say in insurance, such a big change in 5 years is really a big change. So if you're even right now in a market where those things are not taking place, and yeah, in 2014, some of the players, they even had like simple tariffs that you could include in the agency contract. You would basically print it, and then the agent would take the rates and implement it in like his local software or use a calculator. So it can happen, and if you think right now that your market is safe, it's not so much going on, maybe you will find out in 2-3 years that some competitors starting doing this, and you're a bit behind the curve. And this in itself maybe wouldn't be such a big issue if it wouldn't be for the second learning from Poland, which is now we can look again 5 years forward to 2024 results. Those companies that started investing early in rating engines, in advanced pricing, they continue to reap the benefits until today. And of course, this is just a snapshot from 1 year, but it is a true story across the last few years. That those companies who have this really advanced pricing, they continue outperforming the market, sometimes with double-digit growth at profitable rates. And it is still the case that it's still paying off, and other players, some of them are still catching up. So coming back to UNIQA, as I said, well, UNIQA has traditional, let's call it, insurance operations in 12 markets. And the question is how now, what did we do with this knowledge? So we've seen what was happening. We see the benefits of having advanced pricing. Now how to proceed in a group that has 12 countries with very different regulators, different levels of advancement, and sometimes even different business models. So first of all, like I said, there was this ambition stated to be a regional benchmark, which includes, especially in the retail part, the pricing excellence and data analytics as a core strategic ambition. And this was first the statement of the ambition, and now we are in this stage where we are trying to roll it out and implement it. And the key question here is how to organize pricing in such a group to really, on one hand side, empower teams, but also, leverage the scale and ensure best practice exchange. We have now more than 60 tariff actuaries in the group. So we would like to benefit, to let them share the knowledge, learn from each other, and help out each other. And at the same time, not really going there and saying you need to do this or you need to do that. And the way we approach this is we basically looked at 3 pillars. So one is, let's call it strategy. The other one is people and skills. And the third one is tools and technology. But let me start with people, because I think this is the most important one. And here, there's a couple of points that we are addressing. I've split those thoughts in like a local level and group level. I'm looking more from the group perspective, but of course, most of the work and change is happening on the local level. So the first point, which should be quite obvious, is adequate number of FTEs. And I wanted to ask you here, could everyone raise their hand if they think that within their organization, company, they have an adequate number of FTEs in pricing operations? Okay, so I see there are only a few hands. And I think it's good because I think, first of all, this is a tricky question because we haven't been discussing what does it mean adequate. Adequate might mean we have sufficient to manage the business, or maybe we have sufficient to manage the business and experiment or explore or innovate. But I think it's very good that so few people raise their hand, because I think no matter what the correct answer is, we should be more focusing on proving that, so we shouldn't be saying, okay, we have adequate number of FTEs. We should always have this approach, do I have adequate number of FTEs? Maybe I need more, and try to always push the boundaries. Because the answer to this question, how much FTEs is adequate, could be, and I don't know, you probably all know this joke about the man who got lost in a hot air balloon, and he sees a guy on the ground and asks him, there, sir, where am I? And the guy looks at him and says, well, you're in a balloon. And the guy complains, okay, so I had the bad luck to run into a mathematician. He gave a perfectly correct and perfectly useless answer. And I would say a bit of an answer like that is, an adequate number of FTEs is if adding more FTEs doesn't really improve your pricing. And it's perfectly correct, but it's perfectly useless. again, I can imagine the head of pricing going to the board and saying, I need more FTEs. How many more? I don't know. I will let you when I have enough. That's probably not going to get him any FTEs. So let me try to give you some thoughts how we looked at it and what can help sometimes maybe with the assessment of what is adequate. So one first simple thought is that if we have a portfolio, line of business, can be household, and we have a relatively simple pricing and we think, okay, there might be something more done, maybe more risk factors, maybe more advanced models, maybe review of segments, and there is also some flexibility on the market because, of course, there are also sometimes restrictions or limitations on how agents behave, etc. But if we feel that there is a potential for change, then, of course, we could say with those kind of changes on a mid-sized portfolio of, I don't know, up to 20, 30 million euro in premiums, let's say, we could expect a 1 percentage point improvement in combined ratio if we find some segments that are unprofitable or maybe identify some coverages that are not performing. And then, of course, if you have 20 million euro of portfolio, 1 percentage point of combined ratio improvement, that very easily pays for an FTE. The second, and this is also, I think, a story that is easy to discuss with the board. Another perspective is that if you look at your portfolios, probably you will realize that over time there have been some things that were missed. Maybe inflation in some kind of costs, or maybe a coverage that suddenly there were new types of claims that hit a coverage and made it unprofitable. And I've seen it in many companies over the time that in such cases it's very easy to suddenly lose significant amounts of money, like 1 million or 2 million euro, where you suddenly look at the results and you see something is off and then you drill down. And it turns out that because it wasn't monitored enough, it was missed, and then you increase the prices or fix it. It takes another year to re-earn the premiums at new levels. And again, this is a loss that could have been avoided with sufficient number of FTEs. And the third data point is we did some benchmarking across our regions and some outside companies. And we did find that actually in places where we felt that pricing is sufficiently staffed, it was around 20 million euro per FTE. And it's a very simple metric, and it's very imperfect because across our markets even we have huge differences. We have sometimes businesses where this one FTE is looking after, let's call it 3 product variants. But then we also have markets where the same, like one FTE has to cover, yes, maybe again 20 million euro, but 12 different product variants. And that makes a huge difference if you have just a simple household product, maybe not many different things, different variants. You have to manage this compared to motor with different casco and MTPL risks, etc. So that's on the FTE side. But then, and let me jump maybe to this third bullet, clearly defined responsibilities, because again, often a big challenge is that you might have a team, it's fully staffed, they have their adequate size, but the responsibilities are very broad. So yeah, they are in theory looking after P&C, but then whenever there is a new bank offering coming, they prepare the tariffs, or maybe they support SME with analysis, or maybe health, etc., etc. So again, this really impacts the operations. So what we did here is, in UNIQA, we actually now are increasing our team sizes by overall, I would say, 25%, which is spread across markets. In some markets, it's much less. In some markets, it's much more. We're also now agreed with the board members on a structure of how those teams should be allocated to which functions, also saying that, okay, if we have relatively big bank assurance operations, then we should have a dedicated resource for that. And we cannot afford that, you know, every 3 or 6 months now there is a big commercial topic to be prepared for a bank, and now everything else has to be dropped. And finally, of course, local knowledge and expertise. Those people need to really understand the market. I think having this kind of competence is centralized somewhere in one place. I know a lot of insurance companies had this idea, but in the end, you need to understand the local market specifics, be up to date and up to speed with that. So what do we do on the group level to support this development? So, of course, I was talking about the FTEs, but probably this is half of the problem to actually get the budgets, approvals, and structure at everything. And then, of course, to find those people. In most markets, the market is pretty shallow in terms of number of actuaries, tariff actuaries, or data scientists with insurance experience. So we see that quite often it's about hiring relatively junior people and then really training them. And here we have a number of initiatives that as a group we are trying to increase in scale to support countries. One is UNIQA communities. This is actually something that is working across UNIQA also in other areas. We have those communities where people, cross-country employees take part. It's skill-based, so it's always focused around a specific area like pricing or claim handling. It's cross-hierarchies, so there is no like managers, experts. It's basically a group of equal participants. And there are some agile, of course we all work in agile, but there are some specific agile, I would say, structures or ideas to support it, like key strategic initiatives that follow a certain path to really try to get those things going as initiatives in an agile, temporary way of working. So that's one thing. We also expand our own pricing academy, where we have events cross-country, where we focus on specific topics like optimization or maybe use cases on data analytics, where we are trying to upskill people. And we also have now launched a career development path program, where we would like to be able to provide people with a clear career progression to say, okay, if you start as a junior, those are the things you can do to progress, gain new levels, so there is clear path, development path. And this final note on this people topic, I think as insurance companies, we have a very big challenge in this recruitment area, because in most markets, I don't think we're that attractive right now for, unfortunately, for data scientists. There is huge competition. All firms or industries are hiring data scientists. We compete against, some cases, banks, some cases, investment banks, big tech everywhere. As employers, we're quite often not at the same level. And just to give a practical example, one of my colleagues who's coming here, she needed to book her flight through an assistant of the management board, because the company doesn't really have a process for travel for regular employees. So, you know, this is the kind of thing when you hire, especially Generation Z people, they have certain expectations, they're used to certain things, and I think we still, in terms of employer value proposition, have to catch up on that. The second point is strategy, and in strategy, that's a short one. Strategy encompasses a lot of things. For me, the most important things is the alignment of goals and development plans. And on the alignment of goals, again, I feel that in a lot of companies, it is not clear what we try to achieve with pricing. And there are usually misalignments either on the head of pricing board level or board level and group level. So I remember a discussion with the head of pricing who was talking about customer lifetime value modeling. And you know, we were very excited. I came from Poland with a Polish team, and we said, okay, so how do you do this? We never managed to do customer lifetime value. Yes, we've seen it in banks and everywhere, but in insurance, we didn't really had success. And he said, yeah, well, actually, it doesn't work for us, but we use it to justify lower prices for new customers. And this was his story towards the management board, saying, okay, yeah, you know what? We need now to have those prices. But we're going to make up for it in the lifetime value of the customer, and they had some models. But they were saying, in fact, it doesn't work, but it makes for a good story. So this, of course, doesn't help if the management board is not really fully aligned. And then again, on the group level, here as well. So you might be in a group that is now saying that it's going to be the most profitable group in the region, whereas locally you have a country that really needs to increase the scale, and because it's subscale. And then, of course, again, the story doesn't add up. So here, there needs to be an alignment. There needs to be an ownership of this pricing strategy locally, so that those people who define it really believe in it, and they really think that this is what works best. And then on this development plans, really a path to achieving those goals. And especially in pricing, there are a lot of little things that need to be done. So, you know, if you think about, and I'll show you one slide, how we look at it, it's just a framework. I mean, you know, with frameworks, it's like this, that everyone has their own. There are some aspects which you could encompass in pricing strategy, like use of data, technical pricing, commercial pricing, monitoring. And all of those boxes, those are very concrete things that need to be done, sometimes with the help of IT. So use of data, it's like usually in most companies which don't have advanced pricing, this is the first box. The pricing team needs to have up-to-date data, I don't know, monthly or at least quarterly updated contract claim, ideally even much more often. To get this, they need to have the infrastructure. They need to have the connections to the data warehouse or maybe to the claim system. So this is a lot of work that needs to be done. And the same then goes for technical pricing. You need to systematically build those models, update them. If you want to do commercial pricing optimization, you need to have the optimization engine. So all of this is something that takes months to develop. And if you don't have this development plan, if you don't follow it, and if the management board doesn't really keep the focus on making this journey one step at a time, you will find out what we found out. We did in 2021, I think it was, like a pricing capability benchmark where we send out Excel sheets. Everyone loves that. I'm sure you're getting also things like that from your groups to fill out, you know, do you do this, do you do that, how many people do you have risk models by coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And there were some conclusions that this country doesn't have that and so on. And then we repeated it in 2 years. And the result was pretty much the same. So almost nothing has changed. And of course nothing has changed because, as we say in Poland, the tea won't get sweeter just from steering it. You need to make some concrete actions if you identify a gap to cover it. And then on the group level, it's pretty much really supporting to understand the needs, align the priorities between the board members and the group level, supporting in this know-how exchange. And one point that I added here, because it's important for us, omnichannel. Again, sometimes there are some decisions made on the group level around customer, how we want to serve them, multi-channel, omnichannel, what it means for us, that do affect this strategy. And this, again, can lead to big issues if we're saying that customer first, customers should get everything in every channel in the same way, and then the pricing comes in and really has a complete different idea, like, I don't know, monetizing on a specific channel. And finally, on the tools and technology, and I feel that here quite a lot was said also yesterday, that now we're at a stage where technology is really changing our business. There is more and more data. In some countries, we have like 50 million of records. Each record is a few hundred parameters. Of course, you need specific analytical tools to handle this volumes of data. If you want to build models on that, of course, you need to also have either dedicated environments, tools. So this best possible analytical and modeling tools, this is a must. And again, this is something that requires investment, usually it requires time. If you decide on a new tool, you cannot just roll it out, give it to the people. You need to integrate it with data sources, etc. Then flexible rating engine, something that, again, I think is very often not appreciated enough. How much power it gives to the pricing team if they really can do micro experiments, change the tariff, see what's going to happen. This is, I think, in many ways a game changer, although the business case is sometimes difficult to justify if we have already some rating engine in the core system. And again, this omnichannel topic, once you have multi-channel, omnichannel, then it requires dedicated tools. And on this point, I wanted to just go back again to the people side, that if you hire people and then give them Excel to work with, they're probably going to leave the next day or even the same day. So people nowadays, young people, when they, at university, they work with big data, AI, and so on. When they come to the office, they want to have same sort of capabilities, tools. And on the group level, it's about securing investment and maybe attempt standardization. Although here, I'm not a fan of standardization. I don't think it should be enforced. I think it makes sense for groups. It's always a matter of a group. Like, we're a mid-sized group. We tried and managed to convince everyone to the same decision. In bigger groups, I understand that it's difficult. But even there, I think it would be good to have like a small selection of models. Not that we have, I don't know, 10 countries and everyone, this one has Python, this one has earnings, this one has competitors and so on. And suddenly they can't talk to each other. And let me finish off with just one thought how I feel about this. I'm old enough to remember this launch of, I think it was Microsoft Windows 95, where Steve Ballmer tried to make operating systems cool, and he and Bill Gates, they were, let's be kind, they were dancing on stage. And I think sometimes in pricing and insurance, I feel a bit like them, that we are doing things that are extremely advanced, that have the potential to be extremely exciting, but we don't really talk about it in this way. And we always let us being overshadowed by some salespeople who come and say, this is a great opportunity and it's going to make a lot of money. Whereas I think really the great money, the big money is really in pricing, and investing in pricing is what all insurers should do to really gain its benefits. Thank you very much.